Hi, good morning, everyone, and welcome to this session hosted by the Work Life Committee of Institute of Chartered Accountants of India. I am CS Rajan Tiwari, and I will be the host for the day to host this session on performance and balance, managing the work style. Before we get into the topic, we wanted to introduce you to this committee which has been formulated in the council year 2025-26. The Committee on Promoting Work-Life Balance has been constituted with an objective to enhance the well-being of the stakeholders of ICI and also augmenting the professional excellence by promoting a healthy work-life balance for all the stakeholders to enhance our image as globally recognized accounting organization. In line with this objective, the committee has also launched an initiative which is Fit CA Movement, which organizes daily virtual wellness sessions, a visionary initiative by the chairman and vice chairman, sir, of the committee. Under this initiative, daily virtual yoga sessions from Monday to Saturday are being organized between 6 a.m. to 7 a.m., which can be joined by the participants. You can get into ici.org to look for the link of the session and also join in from your comfort zone and take the benefits of these sessions. Now, if we come on the topic for the day, which is power performance of the balance. As someone who started their career in a high performance advisory and consulting environment, I can surely tell you that the performance is not just about how many hours we are engaging, but also how clearly we are able to think in the last hour of the day. In the last few years, a lot of things has been changing for chartered accountants and all the members across the organizations. The regulatory intensity has been increasing, the client expectations are changing, and also the margin of the error is shrinking a lot, right? So the real question is not just can we perform or are we able to perform, but the question also arises on are we able to perform consistently year on year without breaking ourselves in the process. So today's session is not just about extreme fitness routine to balance the lifestyles or adding another to-dos, but it's also about how do we design the systems that work across normal cycles as well as peak cycles. How do we protect our clarity in mind during pressure times? And how do we treat ourselves not just as CA professionals, but as long-term career athletes? So whether you're a fresher CA who's just came out of the articleship and just passed their CA final examination, or a mid-career CA who's juggling between different clients, or tenured senior professionals who are running their practice, we wanted to bring our insights in terms of how do we balance our lifestyles while continue to grow as professionals. And the principles that we'll be hearing today are adaptive in nature, not just prescriptive. So it may depend situation to situation for all the chartered accountants across the profession. For the session, it gives me a great pleasure to introduce our speaker for the day, CA Tina Jain ma'am. CA Tina Jain ma'am is a chartered accountant with 14 plus years of experience in banking and financial services. She holds a deep expertise in regulatory reporting, data transformation, and financial controls. In addition to CA, she also holds a diploma in IFRS from ACCA. She is also a CISA certified professional and a certified nutrition and fitness coach. But for the topic, it's what makes Tina's perspective truly distinctive is not just her qualifications, but also her journey. While coming from a tier 3 city, simultaneously navigating between demanding corporate roles across organizations, she's chosen to deeply study the nutrition science, human anatomy, and also behavioral, not as a hobby, but also in terms of how do we build it as a system. So today, she has coached more than 700 organizations. She's a competitive powerlifting athlete and also a World Powerlifting Open State Championship winner. From our perspective, she embodies a rare intersection of professional credibility as well as scientific rigor to build a system which helps us build a healthy lifestyle. It gives me a great pleasure to invite CA Tina Jain ma'am to come to the mic and share her perspective on the topic for the day. Tina, over to you.
Thank you, Srujan. Hello, everyone. Tina this side. So before I move on to the topic for the session, right, let me share two real life stories. Imagine someone who's a CS student, very hardworking, diligent, gets the opportunity to do articleship and internship with a very large MNC organization, clears CPT, IPCC in the first attempt, And then the feather on the cap is she moves on to get an all India rank when it comes to CA final. 5 years down the line, she gets employed and works in the same organization where she did her internship. Now everything is blooming perfect from a career standpoint. But then after 5 years, she engages with me to explain some of the issues she's facing. And what are those? Career-wise, everything looks perfect on the paper. But then she starts facing some challenging health issues. In her 20s, she gets diagnosed with prediabetes, constant back pain, constant neck pain. And then what is the advice that is given by the doctor? That she probably needs to be on bed rest for the next 2 weeks. And then build certain systems which will help her manage, because this is a lifestyle that, if continued for long, may impact her health in serious ways. Now, what she does, she definitely tries to understand what is it, like where are the root causes? What is it that's causing some of these health concerns? And how can she address them? Because what she really wants is to be able to bloom in her career, continue to grow at the same pace that she has been growing, and then excel as well from a long-term standpoint, right? Not just taking 1 or 2 years into consideration. While sharing the story, let me share another incident that I faced through one of my clients. There was a couple, right? And these were not chartered accountants, but they were good professionals. Post-COVID, they did want to get married. So, usually everybody has this notion that they want to look picture perfect on their marriage day. So then they start the process. Now, what happens, they did give a timeline of 6 months, to reach to that stage. But what happens during this process is they adopt certain measures like, okay, let us do 2 hours of workout. Let us skip food after dinner or after 7 p.m. Let us, hit 15,000 steps a day and so on. Now, on the day of the marriage, obviously, both of them look picture perfect. But what happens after that? Now, this is a scenario that I'm describing that happened during COVID time. And then when I recently met them, now what really happened is they're back to the shape they were originally in. They're occupied with their lifestyles with multiple responsibilities. They are struggling to manage their current lifestyle with all the responsibilities and career they have. Right. Now, with these two scenarios, obviously none is to blame here. But then while you ponder on these two scenarios, it's probable that each one of us relate to it in some form or the other, right? Having aspirations from a career standpoint, wanting to get fit, wanting to get better, wanting to really excel in your career as well, and obviously look perfect on your marriage day, or maybe, be able to juggle through the different responsibilities that each one of us have. Now, with that background, I'll be sharing my screen and head over to the topic for the day. I hope my screen is visible.
Yeah.
So I do want to thank the chairman, the vice chairman, this committee, because for me personally, like Srujan pointed out, this is a personal moment. I qualified as a chartered accountant back in 2012, and this is like life coming full circle, because along with CA, like this particular qualification did help me to shape my career in multiple ways. And then being able to speak back to the community when it comes to health and fitness, something that each one of us also relate to, is like life coming full circle. Everything that I share today is one based on my personal journey, but it is also backed by science and based on all the experiences that I have coached 700 people across the globe, right? So it is not, okay, how do you get a six-pack ab or how do you lose 10 kgs in 12 weeks? It is not about getting leaner or fitter or building the muscular body that people might aspire for. It is something that is more practical and real, that relates to a lifestyle, right? Because let's be honest, in today's world, not all of us may have the advantage or the luxury of spending 2 hours at a gym, or we may not have the advantage of ensuring every meal is like 100% perfect, right? So, how does one go about managing these lifestyles? And this is where I'll be sharing some of the practical insights that can be applied not just for short term purposes, but something when carried over years together really helps sustain power. Now, when I say power, especially in this profession, it is not about the title or the authority that you carry. It is about having that mental clarity on how can one sustain that clarity even in terms of peak cycles, long seasons, and so on. I do want to share some numbers here. Now, this is not to scare anyone, right? This is more just to call out facts and set the context. It is not surprising that 1 in 3 people, like especially busy professionals, face sleep disorders today. The number of people on the rise for pre-diabetes and diabetes is also constantly on the rise. Every second professional you talk to probably will talk about burnout and how they're really looking for the next vacation that they can have. Now, when a problem is rising at this large scale, it is not a you problem or a me problem, right? It is not a personal failure that you haven't been able to do something or I failed at doing something, or it's not that we lack discipline. Like chartered accountants hold discipline in every aspect of their life. So this is more of a structural problem. It is more of the environment. It is more of the environment that sometimes pushes us to these extremes where we are not able to hold on to the basics that we need. And this is where the numbers that you see on the screen. In my language, what I call this is a quiet cost or an invisible cost. And this is the cost that keeps compounding over a period of time. Now, let's understand what are some of the drivers of this quiet cost that we just spoke about. Long and unpredictable hours. Now, this is very common for CA professionals where during busy seasons, the clarity between, okay, what is a weekday and what is a weekend, like almost blurs. What people always face is, okay, we are doing late night review calls, but then early morning we have a client meeting. It is also possible that, okay, you go to sleep on time, but then you're not mentally switched off. Like personally speaking, even when I was doing my CA, after 2 years of becoming a chartered accountant, I still sometimes had dreams that, okay, I failed my accounts exam. So this is sometimes the cognitive load that each one of us carries. And this is happening in work cycles as well, where I talk to professionals and they say, I was thinking through the Excels. I was thinking if I posted the edges entry correctly or not. I was thinking that, okay, something that I did, hopefully there was not an error in that. We also have back-to-back deadlines and client demands. Now, our job just does not require us to punch numbers or anything of that sort, right? It is the constant cognitive load that we go through. Decisions like at a junior level, is this a capital expense or is this a variable expense? Maybe if you're, someone in the senior or a very senior level, your job is also to generate revenue for the firm that you're part of, or maybe for the business that you're part of. So, okay, how do I convince the client or how do I negotiate with the client? Is it going to be X revenue that we can generate or is it Y? It is also about how do I motivate my team, or I know there are timelines, but how can I have those conversations with them to ensure that they are also meeting the respective timelines that have been set? So this constant decision fatigue that each one of us goes through. Like quick test, maybe you can just close your eyes and think if you were to make a decision, let's say a decision in terms of your career or how can you better generate business, it is definitely not that you will do that decision at 9 p.m. Right? People generally prefer to take these decisions when they're a little more relaxed, maybe fresh in the morning, but definitely not a decision that you can take at 9 p.m. when your brain is already fatigued with a lot of decisions and interactions and work that you have had through the day. Another reason of this quiet cost is extended desk time. Now, we all know most of the jobs today are done in a seated fashion, right? We don't have that opportunity to move as much as often. Like maybe in the earlier stages of the career, yes, there are possible that people are constantly visiting their clients, doing site visits, doing stock audits, and things like that. But then gradually, as you grow up in your career, most of your job is mostly desk related. Screen time, obviously, everybody understands it's not just from computers or laptops. There's phone, like we have the habit of checking our phones if there's any email, if there's any ping that's coming. The notifications are like constantly on. Now, where does this lead to, especially after COVID has happened? people had the opportunity to remotely work, but then there was also quite cost associated with it. The number of professionals you talk to who have L3, L4 slip disc, who have spondylitis, who have neck pain is so common. And then everybody's trying to understand, okay, how can we deal better with this? Because what eventually happens over time, like for a day, you can take a painkiller, you can adapt to some rehab movements. But do you want to rely on medicines forever? Definitely not. Right. And then the last one, which is also an important part of what are these drivers of quiet cost, is the nutrition element. Now, obviously, when I say nutrition, don't think in terms of extreme diet or anything of that sort. It's a simple meals that you eat throughout the day. Now, what I've personally seen is highly possible that there's no time to cook. So there is this tendency to order from outside. Or people skip meals because they think it'll help them save time and they can finish the work and then have a relaxed meal later. The other tendency is to usually sip on tea or coffee and avoid meals for longer hours, like, gaps of 5 hours, 6 hours between meals. And then the tendency to eat like right just before the sleep and then not have a proper meal in the morning. So people are always rushing through, how do I manage, like save time even when it comes to eating the food? Like, hand on heart, how many of us actually sometimes have meals while doing our work? Like I've personally done that, right? And then realized, okay, what is it that it's causing me? So these are some of the drivers that I am confident each one of us relate to somewhere in whatever stage of the career or whichever profession we belong to, right? Be it in your own CA firm, be it if you're working with an MNC, or be it with you're working with a consulting firm, we all go through this. And like I earlier said, I do want to reiterate, it's not a personal failure. It's more environment driven. It is more structural in nature. Now, in our profession, this quiet cost leads to something which impacts your power. And then, like Srujan also pointed out, power in this profession is not about authority. Obviously, all of us have ranks, grades based on the firms or MNCs or corporations that we are part of. But it's not necessarily that. Like for a CA, carrying your judgment, being able to decide clearly is is something when done over a period of time plays a huge role when it comes to your profession and your career, right? Like for us, it is clear thinking under pressure and not being derailed by the environment or by the lack of energy when we are taking these decisions. Like I've seen scenarios where some of the review comments on audit reports come from people who would have probably drafted the report like way late in the night. Now, it's not that this particular junior chartered accountant who drafted the audit report didn't have the skill or the knowledge. They do. But what really happened there? It was it was lack of focus, right? And it was lack of energy in this particular situation. The other aspect to it is sometimes you will see people getting a little irritated. Now, not always this is an attitude problem, right? The person who's irritated, like, either sometimes banging on the table or closing the door in a harsh manner, it is also physiological. And it is because the energy has been depleted. So all of this is not just mental, it also comes out in physical ways, in ways that we probably think it's more of just behavioral problem, but then the body is not getting the right set of energy it needs. And this is where, from our profession standpoint, it starts to gradually impact clarity. Now, these clarity could be either in personal choices that you want to make, or when it comes to some of the decisions that you want to take in terms of your team or in terms of your client or your stakeholders. I'm just taking a pause here to reiterate everything that we discussed, right? Just to set the context and ensure all of us are on the same page. So what we spoke about is we have long work hours, probably not every day, not 365 days, but maybe 30-40% of it. In certain scenarios, I've seen like 70% is the case where people are constantly working even through weekends or through long hours. Like the work days are not just like a period of 8 to 9, but they go somewhere between 12 to 14. What that leads to is irregular routines because you're not sleeping on time. You do not have time to take care of your food element. You are compromising on the quality of food. And then hydration as well. Like people forget to drink water. All of these combined, they lead to energy depletion. Now, when your energy is deprived, like based on some of the examples that I shared, gradually what happens is a low quality performance. One-off cases are okay. Maybe, once or twice in a year is okay. But think of it more in terms of compounding effect, right? Like today, you and I, if we are at a very start stage of the career, we feel, this is the energy that we have, this is the life that we have. We want to do the best for ourselves. So why not go over and beyond? And that's fair. It's definitely fair for someone at the very start of the career, to think more in terms of long-term horizon. But what we don't want to miss is the numbers that I displayed at the start of the cycle, at the start of the slide, because this is what is your quiet and compounding cost. And sadly, many of us realize that this is a quiet cost that is costing us. It's impacting our power and clarity only when we see a medical report. Only when the medical report indicates that, okay, my vitamin D and vitamin B12 are low. I'm probably falling low when it comes to my iron, potassium, and magnesium levels. My TSH levels, especially for women, impacts your thyroid. And then I've seen so many professionals actually taking medicines for it. Pre-diabetes, like, yes. Sorry, say that again. क्या हुआ? नहीं, मैंने change किया. Srujan, are you able to see the change slide or no?
No, I was in between. I think it's back to the first page. If you could just put it on full screen and then move forward. Yeah, now it's moving. I think it's still not on full screen.
It is on full screen at my end, but let me stop share and start sharing again.
Yeah.
Is it fine now? Like, are you seeing the next slides
No,
or
it's still not on slideshow.
now?
No, but in case it's not happening, you can just collapse the left bar and the panel and zoom in case it's not happening.
Yeah, or maybe let me share my PDF.
Yeah.
Are you able to see the? I know this may not be full screen, but just trying to understand because I don't want to.
Yeah, I think this is better now.
Fair enough. Okay. Just trying to check where my screen's visible through the conversation, or maybe I can just quickly run through the same.
Yeah, maybe you can just take a pause on page 2 for now, for once, and then you can move forward because I think in between it went back to the home page.
Fair enough. Okay. Sorry about that. All right. So just taking a step back, like some of the things that I spoke about is on slide 2, some numbers that were shared to ensure that everybody has context in terms of how we are heading when it comes to lifestyle disorders. And then the next slide was more talking about what are some of the drivers of this quiet cost or the sustained professional pressures, where we spoke about the long and unpredictable hours, which reduces clarity at the end of the day, where there are back to back deadlines and then client demands, increasing the cognitive workload that everybody faces. And then in our professions, especially after COVID, the overall movement has reduced. So people have extended desk time and screen exposure, leading to physical discomfort, the number of people having back pain. neck pain, spondylitis, L3, L4 slip disc is increasing on the rise as well. And then the other element is more in terms of irregular meals and nutrition. Like people save time by ordering food from outside. Obviously, the food from outside lacks all the nutrition that someone would need to sustain the energy. So these are some of the quiet cost drivers when it comes to sustained professional pressure. So moving on to next slide is where I was talking about in our profession. It's not just in terms of authority, it is more in terms of clarity, and clarity that is required not like in a single month or year, but through the years where there is clear thinking required under pressure. Everybody wants to make the right set of decisions when it comes to clients, when it comes to the team, and when it comes to someone in person as well. Fair enough. So my next slide was just like bringing in everything together, where what we spoke about is how is this performance impacting health. And for us, when it impacts health, it impacts the clarity that we need in terms of making the right set of decisions, making the right set of judgments in a particular scenario. And then what I was also talking about is how over a period of time this compounds, like you have long work cycles which lead to irregular routines. There is energy depletion that happens. And when the energy depletion that happens, based on some of the examples that I shared earlier, it leads to low quality performance. And then there's low quality performance. So people try to make up for it by working hard, working more, but that's not the solution. Right. So I'll just take a pause here, Srujan, if there are any questions coming from the group or if there's anything that you want to add.
Yeah. I mean, there was so on this part, right, where you emphasized on, how things start to, show up gradually, right? As someone who has also faced this in my early career as well, when, we would continuously slog for 12 to 14 hours and, very, very early careers, close to 19, 20, and you're just, working across that for 6 months and then, start to see the impact after 6 months, right? Would love to understand from you what are some early signals, if not the depletion in performance, right? Which would really help someone understand that no, something is happening that needs to be taken care, right? Because this is something that I also face, that for at least 6 to 9 months you're just working perfectly. The quality of the performance hasn't been depleting, right? But then suddenly after 9 to 12 months you start to, like, those signals start to show up, be it in terms of physical fatigue or in terms of mental lack of wellness, right? How do we look at some early or cognitive signals or red flags which someone should clearly start getting alarmed of?
Yeah, I think the first and basic factor where anyone can start noticing something is not right is when you're not able to have a quality sleep. If you are someone who would sleep, let's say, generally by 11 p.m. or 12 a.m., and if you gradually notice that, okay, the sleep cycle is going off a bit, you start sleeping at 1 a.m. Now, what I mean here is obviously it's not that you were awake on purpose, you went to the bed, but then the time it took for you to really fall asleep is one of the indications that, okay, the nervous system, the circadian rhythm is not acting properly. Because what happens is, for example, like I'm wearing this fitness band, right? And it's one of the most accurate that exists in the world accordingly. Now, what I personally noticed is, and this is across for some of my clients I've noticed as well, the moment your body takes a lot more time to sleep and really get into the deep R zone from a sleep quality standpoint, your heart rate by default increases. It requires a lot more energy for your body to be able to keep the other parameters normal. And then when you wake up in the morning, if you don't feel fresh, like you mentioned, it so fatigue generally comes in the evening, and that is normal. But when you wake up in the morning and you still don't feel fresh, that okay, I'm in the right set of zone to be able to complete my work in the next 1 hour, or you don't find yourself in the flow state or focus state, that is definitely an indication that there is something that needs to be taken care of from your health standpoint.
Yeah, I think that's something that I can perfectly relate with, because if you've just sat into work and within 2 to 3 hours you start to feel the fatigue in terms of able to deliver on the work, or even having the willingness to start acting on the work. I think that is one great signal which definitely indicates the need to take break and fix the systemic challenges. I think the another early signal that I could think of was the willingness to power on the caffeine. I mean, as simple as need to take more than the regular number of cups of coffees or tea that you've been having. I think that is one signal that I also have been observing across professionals, which really starts to indicate if you're just not able to survive on your daily meal. That is also one signal that is definitely visible.
Completely agree to that.
Yeah. There's just one more question from the from the students. Sumit has asked that as a CA, so you emphasized on the part about the authority versus clarity, right? So as a CA, when a power often comes from the trust and credibility that we earn from our clients, right, and the decision making authority, how can we exercise this power ethically without getting into the burnout or ego traps in terms of differences between our ability to do justice to the authority that we've been laid into, or the credibility that we have earned, and still manage or balance the things without getting burnout.
Yeah. So there are two elements to this question, right? Now, one is on the ethics part, which each one of us by default are supposed to carry in this profession or in any other profession that that is part of. So I'll definitely not talk from a moral standpoint. Ethics is something that is uncompromised at any given stage, whether you're a student, whether you're fresh at the start of a career or in the future. But to the other point of, okay, sometimes it does impact clarity. Yes, it does. And that is where it is important that, okay, for example, as a chartered accountant, I've decided that this is a qualification that I need to give, that you probably need to give in the audit report. The 9 p.m. test that I just spoke about is something that is really effective. Like, hold on to that decision for the next day or maybe for a couple of days. Consult with your seniors to ensure there is accountability and that if the right decision is being made. Sometimes when you're taking decisions after you're burnt out, they probably are not the decisions that you would want to sustain. It could just be the spur of the moment, because what happens physiologically is, so there's a hormone by called cortisol hormone. Cortisol hormone generally is very high at the end of the day after someone is burnt out or fatigued. Now, in that zone is where your energy depletions happens. The decisions that are really taken because your mind is connected to your body are probably not the right set of decisions. So one technique that definitely works is hold on, pause to that decision that would have been maintained at that particular point of time. Two, accountability, like consult your seniors, your managers, your peers to ensure that the decision that is being taken is indeed a sound judgment at that particular point of time.
Yeah, that makes sense, Tina.
All right, we will move on from here. So everything that I spoke about, how performance starts impacting health and how health is critical from our profession standpoint because it's about mental clarity and judgment. Obviously, it's not just to scare that there's something alarming that is happening. The good news is that anyone can break this loop. Right. Now, when I started the session, I shared two examples. One was of a CA student who's a rank holder working with a large MNC, going really good from a career standpoint, realizes that there are some health concerns that need to be taken care of, takes them into accountability, and then continues with that zeal, momentum, doing well in career as well. Now, the other example that I spoke of was more of a couple, trying to look picture perfect for a day. Now, if you compare these two examples, is it so that any one of them lacked motivation? It's not. Some people might say that discipline is generally a problem. Yes, it can be in certain cases, but in the example that I shared, discipline was not a problem as well. Because if you see, both were able to achieve the goals that they need. They did everything that is required to ensure nothing is going off track, and then both of them meet the goals. But then what happened between case one and case two is the lack of systems. The first person was more focused on how do I ensure my energy remains intact 3 years, 5 years, 10 years down the line? How do I ensure that I'm not depleted out of my energy? In the second scenario, it was more focused on treating health like a side project or treating aesthetics or fitness like a side project to say, okay, I want to achieve this goal and then let me just go back to square one. Now, where both stand in terms of graph, right? Like one person rose, had a dip, but then took measures, relied on systems, not just motivation to excel, and continues to grow up the graph this way. Now, in the second scenario, what happens is the graph just doesn't go down, it in fact goes negative. Because from where you started and where you are today, to rebuild that entire loop takes time, right? So, when generally someone, and it's very possible you would have noticed, like if someone loses weight, highly chances that they're rebounding it after 3 to 4 years. And when they start, it takes them a lot more time to bring back the systems in place. Now, what the main difference is when it comes to this is the entire methodology. Now, what I like to call this in terms of systems is the three systems framework. What you see on the screen currently is probably not terms that you've not heard of, but it is the balance of these three. Sometimes people focus so much on nutrition, but forget about the movement and the recovery part. Or there are people very, very enthusiastic when it comes to sports, um, doing something social in person, with a lot of clients, or when it comes to team members, very active when it comes to doing, let's say, yoga, Pilates, strength training session, anything of that sort. But what really matters and something that everybody can take a note of is a check on all of these three together. Because this is the system that I've seen working if anybody is constantly doing a daily check, a weekly check. Again, I'm not talking in terms of a checklist, but if you're taking care of these aspects, these form the basis of your health. And when your health is sustained, is where you're able to achieve that clarity, is where you're able to perform. And when you do that on a repeated basis, like everybody would have read Atomic Habits, right? The impact of compounding, the effect of compounding. Same applies when it comes to health and fitness. So, this is the three systems framework that I like to call. Very simple to follow, something that you need to take care of, not as a side project, not something that you would want to just do it for next 3 months or 6 months, but really embedded it on your day-to-day basis, because that is what will help you achieve what you need to. Now, the first system that we spoke of is nutrition during peak cycles. Now, it's very common for us, like I mentioned, to go through these peak cycles, not have the right set of nutrition. What you see on the screen currently is obviously some of the micro habits that can work. And I will not go to explain all the scientific methodology, but if I have to draw parlance with our accounting terms in terms of chartered accountants, right? Three basic elements that you need to take care of when it comes to nutrition. Like they're called your macronutrients, carbohydrates, protein, and fats. Everybody would have heard it, but I really wish more of our education also focuses on these elements, because once you understand the basics, you realize it is not difficult as it seems to be. It is not a motivation problem or it is not a discipline problem. Now think of carbohydrates like your cash flows in business. What do cash flows do? They help you maintain your day-to-day operations, right? Same is the case with carbohydrates. They provide the body the instant energy that it needs. So if I'm going for a marathon or if I'm hungry, the first thing that everybody generally looks for is, okay, basic food like rice, dal, all of these are carbohydrates. The problem with carbohydrates is that like too much of cash flow, like I said, because compare it to your cash. Now, too much of cash without adequate controls causes volatility. You need controls over your cash. Similarly, when it comes to your carbohydrates, you do not need that in excess. You need to complement it with something else to be able to sustain the right set of energy. Now, carbohydrates, as we all understand, if I just have to give a few examples, it is rice, wheat flour, any flour that you take, um, potatoes. These are all good sources of carbohydrates that we generally have. The second one is your fats. Now, think of your fats as your long term investments. Um, they are essential because you just don't want to think of your business or your body in short term. So, compare carbs to your long term investments. Essential, yes. But do they give immediate returns? They don't. Because long term investments are more slow in nature when it comes to returns, but they are very essential from running your business or operations standpoint. What that means is fats in our body helps us absorb all the necessary vitamins and minerals. They are essential. In fact, if a person were to have like zero fats for a period of 28 days, high chances the person will not survive. So fat is something that the body needs. The problem is too much of processed food or too much of trans fat, which we see in some of the fast foods today. Now, the last but not the least is your protein. Especially for vegetarians, one challenge that is faced is the lack of adequate protein in the meals. Now, proteins are more like, again, I'm just trying to draw balance, more in terms of accounting terms so that it does not seem like too much of science. Um, think of them more like your capital assets, right? You need them. They are like your pillars of your business. You need them to run your day-to-day activities. Uh, Again, they will not give you instant energy, but without your capital assets, you're just like operating on a very short-term basis. The role of protein in the body is to basic primary role is to act more like generation of tissues, repair, recovery, and so on. Now, one beauty about protein is that it has the highest thermic effect of food. Again, not going too much scientific, but what it means is that if you have a meal which is focused on protein versus if you have a meal which is only carbs or fats, your body will be able to sustain way longer when it comes to maintaining that energy if there is a protein in your meal, because that is the role of protein. Like its thermic effect of food is about 20 to 25%, which means that if I consume a protein meal today, like I had a protein meal for my breakfast, I will be able to sustain that energy till 1 p.m. because protein helps absorb, digest, and then carry all the nutrients to my body. Versus, let's say if I just did a carb focused food, if I just had maybe some paratha only for my breakfast, my energy crash will be instant. Maybe I'll be able to survive for an hour, but then after an hour, you will feel that need from the body to have something else. That is where you will notice if you have sweet like one time, after every second hour or third hour, you will feel like, okay, I need something more. I need something more. And then that routine just continues. That cycle just continues. Right. So these were three things that I wanted everybody to be careful about, because it's not that carbs or fats or protein by themselves are problematic. Now, there are a lot of myths prevailing. It's easy for someone to say, skip rice at night, or it is easy for someone to say you're not supposed to eat paneer because it is very high in fat. Those are myths. What really is a problem is a combination of these three. So, what you see on the left hand side here is like some of the drivers that I did speak about, like skipping meals to save time. Your body's already deprived of energy. Like Srujan also pointed out, excessive tea or coffee. Obviously, one, replacing food, two, indication that okay, your body is dependent on your stimulant to be able to sustain energy. Long gaps between meals. Now, this is another big problem. Sometimes people think that, oh my God, yesterday I ate so much of food, or I had a party outside, or I was in a client meeting and hence I had to eat outside. So let me compensate it today by starving, or I will just do like one meal in a day. Unless you're undergoing unless there are medical reasons associated to it, in some cases, yes, it is good to stick to one meal, but I will not discuss those cases here. But in general, you are not doing the right thing by starving yourself. Your cortisol hormone, the stress hormone, just spikes up. And once that spikes up, you will not just resort to simple basic foods that will not give you satisfaction. Your body will look for more of processed foods like cakes, chocolates, chips, anything that is, very high in trans fat or high in carbohydrates. So some of the things that each one of us can take for is ensuring there's protein and fiber in every meal. Now, some examples of protein, just to keep it very basic, is obviously for vegetarians, like I mentioned, limited options, but tofu, soya chunks um, are good sources of protein. There's another myth that prevails that dal is a good source of protein. It is not. If you compare its nutrients, it is more high in carbs than the amount of protein that dal would give. For someone who consumes egg whites are very good source of protein. And then for someone who consumes non-veg as well, definitely chicken and fish are good sources of protein. So they can be incorporated on a day-to-day basis. Fiber, because one, it helps with high satiety levels. Fiber is generally your vegetables and fruits, right? Like not too much of fruit, but then some element of vegetable will be preferable. It helps maintain the satiety so that there are no energy crashes or dips that are happening. Um, Drinking 3 liters of water every day. Now, when I say this, obviously nutrition is not just your food, it includes your hydration as well. It's very surprising when I see people forget to drink water. Like you ask, and then you'll see there are people just sustaining on like hardly 1 liter of water, 2 to 3 glasses in a day. Think of it as like we all get water supplies in our home, right? If on a particular day, if the corporation announces that there's no water supply that's going to be across, what do each one of us do? We start saving water, we start preserving water, and we use it only for your bare minimum essentials. Now, same is the case with your body. The moment your body gets a signal, especially your brain, that this person is not providing enough water, it starts storing it. Now, that is where it causes water retention. What that leads to is bloating, then it leads to digestion issues, and that impacts your overall health system again. So, whether you like it or not, like some people say that I don't feel thirsty at all. But that is because your body is like you've forced your body to adapt to that rhythm. Make this habit, like keep alarm on your phone or whatever it could be, to at least drink 3 liters of water. Even for someone who's not working at all. So let's say if you're just sleeping in the entire day, the body needs at a minimum 2.2 liters of water for an average human being. So professionals like us who constantly go through cognitive overload, who also have a lot of other responsibilities to take care of, this is one good habit that everybody can incorporate that is going to definitely benefit from a long-term standpoint. The other element that I quickly have here is pre-planning meals. Now, what I mean here is obviously not decide every day what your next day menu is going to look like. But if you know that in general, your food consists of roti, rice, and dal, good. Stick to it. But just add some source of protein. So if you're vegetarian, if you consume eggs, can you just add 2 eggs to it? If you're a vegetarian, can you add some form of soya or paneer to it? Just try to ensure that, okay, you cut maybe a little when it comes to your carb sources or fat sources and bring in protein there. That should just save for your week or for your month. Now, when it comes to the other thing that I've noticed is cognitive load or decision fatigue that we call, right? You'll usually see that people sometimes are thinking, okay, what should I order? What should I eat? What should I eat? And then after 1 hour, it's just that they sometimes lose that entire hour just thinking, okay, what should I order for lunch or dinner? Now, that is where decision fatigue comes, even when it comes to nutrition. So, if you're just able to look out, and obviously with all the advancements that we have these days, there's some element of protein and fiber that can be taken care of. And then obviously ensuring minimum healthy fats. Just to give some examples, these are your nuts, um, not trans fat foods. So nuts, avocado, eggs are also a good source of healthy fat. And then some of your oils, butter and ghee. I'll take a pause here if there are any questions, because this forms the base of everything that goes inside the body, right? And it is very key that we take care of it from a long-term standpoint. Obviously, not trying to go extremes in any ways or discuss specific cases, but this is like the foundation.
Yeah, thank you so much, Tina. I think this is really a matter of emphasis, for the session, and I wanted to make it super tactical. So wanted to, deep dive into a couple of things around this, right? When we look at different category of professionals within the CA fraternity, I think two, three key cohorts come out, right? So when we talk about making nutrition, healthy and making it very tactical for them, right? Let's say if we talk about a cohort which is early in their career, which I've seen a lot, that there's a lot of element around travel and outstation audits, right, where the nutrition becomes a bit of challenge, right? So for the people who are in early 20s, mid 20s, right, who are traveling a lot to nearby locations and mostly eating the food from restaurants or hotels, it becomes a bit of challenge when you are like continuously working for 14-15 hours, and then you have to balance the meals, because that was one challenge that I used to face. And the way I would balance it is excessive tea, coffee, right? So for the for the current people, how do we change that so that even with this kind of setup they are able to maintain the adequate nutrition even during peak cycles?
Yeah. And a very valid question, because, like you said, at the start of the career, in fact, there's some professions that require you to constantly travel, right? Either domestically or internationally.
Yeah.
What matters here is stick to simple and basic foods in those scenarios. Now, it might sound cliche, but like for example, one of my clients is a fresher chartered accountant traveling for like 3 days in a week. What we have done in his case is, okay, for your breakfast, you will have the person eats eggs. So you will have like 2 or 3 whole eggs along with some vegetable or salad, whatever's available. For your lunch, now rice, dal, like you mentioned, is available everywhere. What needs to be avoided here is the decision that, okay, let me try something new. I'm not saying don't try. Obviously, I get this concept of you live your life only once. So you're supposed to try whatever is the domestic food. But how can you damage control? I wouldn't say damage control, but how can you balance there, right? It's like 80-20%. Now, if you are someone, who's traveling, let's say almost every other week, if 4 days, if you stick to the basics when it comes to your meal, taking care of these pointers, and if there are like 2 days or one day when you just want to splurge, that is fine as well. Because don't think in terms of that week. Now think that week multiplied by 84 weeks that you have in a year, right? Or if you think from a day standpoint, if there are 3 good meals that you're able to have, and then one meal slightly goes beyond your control, which is totally okay. Um, but then look at it again from a long-term horizon standpoint. 365 days, maybe like 30 days you have birthdays, you have festivals, you are traveling, you are fully not in control, or you just want to like give yourself a break. So those are probably out of 365 days, like maximum what, 60 days or maybe 180 days, right? But the other 180 days are going to count as well. And that is what matters from a long run standpoint, that you cannot be perfect every day, but if you're able to take care of these basics. So next time if you're traveling, like can you request that, okay, I'll just stick to something which is not very high in butter, very not high in oil or ghee, is clearly evident that it does not contain a lot of sugar or a lot of cream. And then there is some element of protein to it, or there's some element of vegetable to it, you're good to go.
Yeah.
So I do have like students who live in hostels. Now they don't have the flexibility to order out as well, because obviously financial elements are something that need to be taken care of when you're a student, and they live in hostels. Now these hostels provide foods, but they are able to manage their health because again, they're sticking to basics there.
Yeah, that makes sense. I think there was one more, systemic change that we also, brought to the table that I would want to add to your point, which was, across outstation travel, it's generally a team of, 4 to 5 people who are, working on a project, right? So what we used to do was to nominate a food champ, right? And the food champ, we would generally want to have someone who has healthier habits as compared to others. So as a result, what started happening was, me personally, right, who would, stick to, Indian food. There was another, guy who would generally have salads at least once, one meal in a day. As a result, I started eating salad every day, and I think that was one thing, because of making him food champ, that changed a, lot of nutrition for me. Similarly, even with the water intake, something as you highlighted, right, as simple as a water alarm on your smartwatches, right, just helps you, continue and build on your, water intake throughout the day. Maybe 6 to 8 alarms throughout the day would at least has helped me increase from 2 liters to 4 liters water in a day. So I think these baby steps have been really, really, helpful. There's one more point here. uh, we touched upon about outstation travel, where you're supposed to, go, and then locally it's not much of a, conveyance challenge, right? Then there's a separate cohort who's doing a lot of domestic travel, during, again, in the early careers, right? We're talking about people who are working, let's say, in a region like Mumbai or in NCR, where they are taking cabs daily and sitting in the cabs for like 1.5 hours one way, or staying in, let's say, Mumbai local for 1 hour, going to the office, and 1 hour coming back from there. What are some baby steps that you would suggest, across, the specific cohort that they can take up?
Yeah. So I know everything that we spoke about is right now from a nutrition standpoint. So some of the things like you pointed out, Srujan, right? To be able to take care of, okay, I'm eating X, but how can I add Y to it, which is more going to be sustainable from a long run standpoint? Uh, the other element that I did want to speak about, and it is a good segue, is when it comes to movement. Now, some of the baby steps, like you pointed out, is we end up sitting for long hours. We end up spending time in metros, trains, probably cabs as well. And for some, it is, constant flights as well. If you're like a professional who's based out of Bangalore, you might just end up spending 2 hours to reach the airport. Um, and things like that. So, what needs to be taken care of is, along with the daily check that you can do, okay, did I consume 3 liters of water? Did I have protein at least in 2 or 3 of my meals? If yes, the other element that I do want to focus is on movement. Now, when I say movement here, it is not about spending or ensuring that even during your busy hour day, you're spending like 2 hours or 1 hour in the gym or at a yoga session or at a Pilates session or whatever might be the case. Understand that our bodies are meant to move, right? Now, the mantra that I specifically like is movement is medicine. In today's world, it holds so true because early man stages, right? They were constantly on the go. What has happened over a period of time is, with the number of seated hours that we have, the body is not able to function the way it was. Like a hand is supposed to do a specific movement, but sometimes people struggle to raise their hand even to the arm's length. And some of the things that we earlier spoke about is from a slip disc standpoint, people constantly facing back pain, relying on car seat supporters, desk seat supporters, standing desk. That is because your hips are not moving the way they're supposed to move, right? Now, one basic element that people can take care of is 15 to 20 minutes of movement in a day. This could be at a hotel where you're staying, this could be in the hostel where you're staying, or this could be sit at your home before you start with your travel. What I'm not talking about is make it extreme, but what is really important is to take care of this basic step that, okay, can you do some mobility or some stretching before your day starts? In some cases, it also helps people improve their sleep largely if they're able to perform a basic movement before they sleeps. Um, the second thing that I did want to touch upon is strength training. Now, when I say strength training, generally the perception that comes in someone's mind is lifting heavy or probably a gym picture in the mind or someone carrying six pack abs or anything of that sort, right? That is not the intent of strength training. Strength training is more in our professional, if I have to say, it is like an insurance against all your functional related issues that we have with your body. If 10 years down the line, you want to ensure that you're able to lift your kids and then carry them for like 1.5 hours without experiencing a pain in your hands or in your back. Or like a lot of professionals tell me this, that I'm not concerned about weight loss. I'm not concerned about looking great aesthetic wise, but what I need is the energy to be able to play with my kid. What happens is, even in the age bracket of like late 30s these days, people get tired after 1 hour of movement, like after 1 hour of going out for shopping, or after like 30 minutes of lifting their kids. These are all your indications that 10 years down the line, you will highly, your will highly become a lot more immobile. And immobility is something that will not be helpful to perform your day-to-day functions. And does it impact your career? It will, right? Because you want to be able to be more confident, carry all the energy levels, and ensure that you have a fully functioning body. And your insurance against that is strength training. The reason I specifically put it out here on my slide is, well, any athlete you take now, be it marathon runners, be it cricketers, be it swimmers, any athlete or sport you take, one thing that all these athletes ensure is that they are performing at least like 2 sessions of strength training in a day. That is because your body needs muscle. If you're just someone who will say that, okay, I will only run and run, that may not be helpful from a long run standpoint because you're depleting your muscle further. Now, what's your insurance against it to ensure that the body retains muscle mass is your strength. Now, where is muscle coming into picture? Because this is where your joint health comes into picture. Like people have ACL issues and things like that, right? Now, how is your movement linked to your nutrition? For your muscle to be able to repair and rebuild, again, it falls back to protein and hydration. So this is all a loop. And something as simple that you can start, irrespective of the age group that you're in. And I recently saw some videos about a woman who was like 80 years plus, and she's lifting, like she's trying to lift. And then there was another woman, who shared her happiness at how she's so happy seeing her mom lifting dumbbells. The reason is that once you do that, like for a period of 3 months, you will yourself see the difference in your energy levels. That boosts your confidence, and that confidence reflects in all the conversations that you do. Now, why it matters from a profession standpoint, because like Srujan also pointed out, like you are going along with your team to meet your clients. Gradually, once you reach mid stage, you're in a position where you need to direct your teams. You need to be able to have these conversations with confidence. All of this is also structured, one, to the energy levels that you're able to sustain, to be able to fully functional from your body standpoint, and then three, to carry that overall confidence to ensure that, okay, there is nothing that is impacting, because all these over a period of time start taking a hit on your career or on your profession. Right. So I again do want to take a pause here if there are questions that any one of you have on why strength training or why is a daily movement required, or some of the basic things that you can do on a day-to-day basis.
Yeah, there were two questions more towards the nutrition part that we also wanted to cover along with the movement, right? So, one is so Vishweshwar has asked, do micronutrients cause mood swings or changes in the the attitude towards things in terms of work?
Yes, they do play a role. Obviously, I spoke of the macronutrients, which are your carbs, proteins, and fats. Now, what happens is, one, you get early signals, like I mentioned, the example of sleep. Two, it is also possible that it's important to get a blood work done, because normally, if your energy is impacted, if there's irritability, high chances that either your iron, potassium, or magnesium levels are low. So, do micronutrients play a role? The answer to it is yes. But where do those micronutrients come from? They come from your food sources, right? Now, especially if you're having a protein rich food, very largely your micronutrients are taken care of.
Understood. That makes sense. Then there was one point around movement, right? So when we talk about peak cycles, right? So Tushar wanted to understand how should CAs, approach fitness or movement differently during peak hours, let's say peak September time or tax filings in the November or September, right? How do we approach the fitness or movement separately during peak cycles as compared to other periods, and then how do we try to balance it across the year, right? So is there something that we could be doing throughout the year but try to curtail more towards peak cycles that could help us balance it across the year, and small again tactical things that you would suggest specifically around peak cycles itself?
Yeah. So human tendency, and psychologically, it is called fresh start effect. Very common for people to say, okay, once the new year starts, I will join a gym. And that is why you see like gym memberships are highest in Jan. And then they usually promote annual memberships because that's when they generate most of the revenue. Highly possible for someone to say, okay, today my diet has gone for a toss. I missed my gym session today. So I will start fresh from next Monday. And if you're somewhere at the fag end of the month, again, another common thing to hear is I will start it fresh from the first of next month. Now, psychologically, the brain loves fresh start effect because it makes you feel that one, you were not a failure. Two, now you're fully in control to be able to take care of the environment and situation, and you will ensure that you're not falling off track. But the problem here is this is a repeated loop. Like every new year, you will find people taking new year goals and resolutions. And by the time you reach October, November, you will realize that they are far, especially when it comes to health and fitness goals. I'm not saying in all aspects of life. Now, what I do like to call for this specific strategy or to the question on how do we ensure, what is the minimum that we can do? Now, this is again in psychological terms called as minimum value principle, MVP. There are days when you will feel the best, which are not your peak cycles. Probably those are like 6 months, 7 months, or 8 months, based on which journey of your profession you're in. And there are days when for example, September in the case of audit season is going to be hectic. You really cannot be hitting every tick mark that you had from your goal standpoint. On those days, stick to your bare minimum. Now, when I say bare minimum, 20 minutes of movement. Now, that could just be like 5,000 or 6,000 steps a day. And trust me, it'll help you. You do it constantly, you will start realizing the difference in your thought process levels. Two, again, going back to the basic, can I have some element of egg whites or chicken or fish or paneer or soya or tofu in every meal that I take? And three, have I consumed 3 liters of waters at least? If you're able to take care of these three aspects, you will realize that, let's say, after your busy season, in this example, after September is over, if you're wanting to again go back to 1 hour of movement sessions, 1 hour of workout sessions, ensuring that every meal is perfect, your body will support it very largely than to put a break to everything and then restarting it. What you don't want to do is restart the circle every time, because then you're not starting from zero, you're almost starting from negative. So ensure these three things that we spoke about: protein and fiber in every meal, 3 liters of water every day, 20 minutes of movement. If you're able to take care of it, and to some it may sound cliche, but the problem is nobody does it consistently. Do it consistently for about a month, and you will see the difference that in the next month, when you have off cycles, you'll be able to hit your best performance when it comes to both your personal life as well as your professional life.
Yeah, that's very helpful, Tina. I think even I can relate to a couple of examples. For example, we used to have a blackout period. Maybe at 5 p.m. we'll go out for a 10-minute walk. So that 5 to 5:30 is reserved. That unless there's a CEO or leadership call, there are no meetings, no work happening between that period, and we'll go out for a 10-minute, walk. But keep it very, very disciplined that it's a 10-minute or 15-minute walk so that you don't compromise on your work quality even during peak cycles, at the same time managing your movement as you highlighted. There were a couple of other interesting questions which were coming in that I wanted to touch at this point itself. Manjesh has suggested that you emphasized on individual movement, right? in terms of building it as a culture, right? How do individual practitioners or firms can promote a culture where fitness and well-being is supported so that better performance can be yielded?
Yeah. So it has to be embraced in the culture. The good news is I've seen a lot of organizations that have been part of as part of my coaching career is that there are wellness dedicated initiatives that are being taken care of. Now, it's not just in terms of, okay, what is the investment that is going on in these initiatives? For example, you and I can be the champion who have this discussion, with our peers, seniors, or management to say, I want to include like a 15-minute break, focusing on stretching at desk, right? Or maybe just like a 10-minute, I know you said the word blackout, or what we call it is like more like silence or power silence session where nobody is doing anything. All the person is required to do is just stay quiet, close your eyes, keep your phones and your desktop or your laptop away. So I think these are some of the micro initiatives that can be taken obviously care of at a larger scale. But also remember that for something to work at larger scale, what is important is how each one of us contributes to that, right? And becomes the change agent as well. Because obviously it is possible that some of the organizations do not realize like it's possible the importance of health or because there are other conflicting priorities, nothing wrong there, but can you be the one who's initiating the change? Like Srujan gave a very beautiful example, right? Like they have someone assigned who's going to um, decide what meal needs to be ordered, and that person is generally someone who's like a health champion. So that person is playing a very good leadership role to ensure that okay, the nutrient requirement of everybody is taken care of. But but I will also open it up, like if there's someone from the audience who says what sort of initiatives can be, like suggestions can be taken at large scale to ensure wellness is also being taken care of.
Yeah, it would be super helpful if people could, share their experiences in terms of this as well. Even this is something that I've also seen in the Japanese work culture where they prefer to have a 2 to 2:30 blackout period. Again, it's either power naps or people stepping out of the office. But generally, in terms of promoting the culture, it's like unless it's a very urgent matter, 2 to 2:30, I don't want to see any screens on, right? Either people need to shut their brains in terms of taking a power nap or they need to start movement by stepping out and do something, but screen shouldn't be turned on. So I think that is something that is really promoted in the culture, across countries. There was one more question. So Gaurav has asked, can you give some tips for the CAs who are having remote jobs or work from home jobs on how they can manage their nutrition as well as movements?
I think having a remote job, again, this view is very personal. It gives you certain added advantage because you save time in terms of commute, right? Sometimes also save times in terms of the number of um, the number of, let's say, offline meetings or conversations that would happen on the floor. You're like almost in full control of your day because you know what time you're supposed to start work. How can you balance your priorities? One of the things that has worked with my clients is now there are some professionals who really start early in the morning at 8 a.m. What's not going to work for them is okay, wake up at 4 a.m., finish your exercise by 7 a.m., like decide all your meals, cook everything. That's not going to work. So what I really do and sit with them is, which is something that you can do for yourself, is look at your week's calendar and see where are those chunks that are available where you can prioritize things either from your nutrition standpoint or from your movement standpoint, right? It does not have to be 8 a.m. every day. I am doing my yoga session. Sometimes I do it at 4 p.m. on a Saturday. For instance, today, did I meet my movement requirement of the body? No. But am I going to do it sometime in the evening? The answer to it is yes. So having a remote job is an advantage when it comes to maintaining your health and fitness because one, you're in control, and then two, block your calendar, right? Like I have my calendar blocked for today, 4 p.m., that I need to go and play tennis. So you can do something that you enjoy. What I also want to add is that there has to be an element of fun or passion in it. It is not that, like the intent is not to say that you are supposed to do only strength training. Add it, but then also add something that you enjoy. I am someone personally who cannot run on a treadmill. Like, be whatever might be the case, that has been a challenge for me. However good I am from a strength power standpoint, but like running on a treadmill just does not happen with me. But then I realized, like 3 years back, I need to improve on my endurance. I'm very good when it comes to lifting heavy weights, but bad when it comes to endurance. Like I get tired after an hour or so. So what I did was I picked up sports, because sports are a good way to improve your cardiovascular health, your endurance levels, right? So now my training regime more looks like a combination of strength. Like I do 3 to 4 sessions in a week, and then weekends are generally some sport that I enjoy. So identify what works for you and then fit that on your calendar. um, the moment it is on your calendar, like you would not skip a meeting, right? Or you would not skip a call if you know it is structured and an invite has been sent out. High chances you will not miss something of this sort if it is like chalked out and blocked on your calendar. Or maybe it could just be a simple diary, like for example, for me, I still always maintain a diary, because these are 10 things that I want to be able to achieve over a weekend. And then there is this adrenal rush or dopamine effect to say, okay, tick mark, this is done. So these are some of the things that can be done if you're working remotely.
Yeah, that makes sense. And if the daily check-in and check-out calls can be on your calendar, I think these are again some smaller things that you could definitely add to your calendar for your own self and longer well-being. Then there are a couple of broader questions that we can maybe cover towards the end. Maybe we can proceed, and then some broader questions we can cover towards the end.
Yeah. Um, I know we spoke about nutrition and movement. The third system that I don't want to be compromised on, and something that we all probably compromise on in some aspect, is your recovery. What I mean by recovery here is not just your sleep, right? But your overall off work time, or some of the naps that you probably can take when you're loaded during your peak cycle. Now, one pattern that we discussed earlier is irregular sleep, like not being able to sleep at the same time, or taking a lot more time to actually fall asleep. While, let's say you would have hit the bed at 10 p.m., but then it's taking an hour, 2 hours to even fall asleep, or then waking up, like the sleep slow so light that even, this minimum sound around sunrise, people just wake up and then struggle to go back to sleep again. The other element is mental load during cognitive time. Again, not getting into very specific times, but like I said, it's possible that in your dreams you're thinking about work. That is also an indication that your body is not fully recovered or rested. What I suggest having here is deliberate mental shutdown. Keep your phone away before you hit the bed, right? I understand in certain scenarios, emergency cases, urgent timelines, it may not always be possible, but can you at least try? Switch off your mind from a work standpoint. Reading book, listening to soft music is is something that has been proven by science that it really helps. Now, don't get me wrong here. Doing this for one day is not going to help. It has to be inculcated in your system, in your routine, right? For example, if you do great on one day, it is not that you're going to become an overachiever or a top performer. You have to show that performance on a consistent basis. Same is the case when it comes to recovery. You will be surprised to know that one underlying factor for all the health lifestyle disorders that we discussed earlier is also your sleep. A lot number of times I've helped clients improve their sleep cycle, and that has improved bloating, digestion, mental fatigue, and then the ability to be able to take decisions in peak cycles. So, do want to stress out that it is not always about doing things as per the system. It is equally important. I call this more like the connecting factor, or the underlying factor is to pay importance to your sleep cycle overall.
Yeah. I think the couple of pointers that I wanted to deep dive into in the recovery point, right? I think this is one of my favorite topics on this whole. So, so one point is you talked about the pressing the off switch, right? So a lot of time it happens that early in career, right? You're facing this point that even in your sleep you're getting those recalls, right? That, oh, that was the error because of which the balance sheet was not matching. Maybe as simple as that, right? Or maybe if I were building a financial model, right, and the numbers are not matching, you're getting some random signs of this is what it would have tallied, right? Or maybe I'm recalling that this was the provision because of which something is not working. How do you actually activate that off switch so that once, at least during the sleep, if not during the day hours, at least in the sleep you are able to press that off switch?
Yeah. So one thing that definitely is science proven and works is journaling, or what I also call is having your own personal hygiene routine. What I mean here is, okay, there are 10 thoughts that you have during your day that you want to look at it from a next day standpoint. Can you write it down somewhere? Because the moment you write it down, your brain gets a signal that, okay, these are things that need to be worked upon and they will be taken care of. And then have your own hygiene to it. What I mean by that is you can listen to some soft music. People enjoy reading books. So make that habit, and instead of scrolling your phone, you're actually reading something. And that can be another powerful tool to be taken care of. So I think developing your own hygiene routine, definitely like sleep hygiene routine is what I call, helps you switch off. And then that done over a period of time maintains consistency and really gives you the power to be able to mentally switch off. In some cases, what has also worked is, okay, if it's a weekend, tomorrow you have a little more relaxed timeline, you can go out with your friends, like socialize, right? Or just like connect over a tea or coffee to say, this is how my day went. The moment you're able to share what you have been going through the day with someone, that eases or calms down your nervous system. And once your nervous system is calmed down, like sleep becomes so much better, either from a depth or quality standpoint.
That makes sense. To build on this point where you referred about, listening to some soft music or, reading some book, right? I've seen professionals who would, use white noise or, music to sleep. Is that a healthy habit?
Yes. So obviously, there are different types of music that you will hear. One is white music, blue music. Now, in terms of therapy, there's also, red light therapy that is coming these days into picture. The reason these have been designed, right, are taking care of what is your nervous system demanding at that particular hour and what does it need to be able to sleep. Now, there is enough scientific research and evidence that is done to say that, okay, when it comes to white music, it is like studies have been done to see that the brain signals are really calming down, nervous system lowers. People have seen to improve like heart rate variability. And hence, that has come up as one of the suggestions that people can adopt to say that, okay, I'm going to listen to this kind of music for 15 minutes a day and then improve the overall sleep cycle. What I do want to call out as a caution here is what might work for some may not work for everyone. So each one will have to identify what is it that works best for them. Like for me, journaling helps a lot. For some, it is a very tedious task to do. For some, it is okay, can I just listen to some music and it's good? But for some, music sometimes really becomes okay, it probably is not helping me. So the tools, like we shared, are music, reading books, having chamomile tea. That's another good option, or journaling. But then identify what works best for you and adopt that.
Understood. But still having a heavy reliance on any of this doesn't seem unhealthy, right? For example, not being able to sleep without playing a music or not being able to sleep without playing, let's say, white noise doesn't seem unhealthy on the face. Would that be correct to say?
Yeah. So what I want to call out here is it unhealthy? No. But then at the base of it, you would want to address the root cause.
Yeah,
Because all of these are tools or techniques, but if the foundation is not addressed, then the problem might recur in some shape or form in future. So yes, like for example, some people take Melocet. Melatonin is your sleep hormone. So I know it is suggested in certain like clinical cases to take melatonin, which is a sleep hormone that is specifically induced in the body so that the person is able to fall asleep. But does someone want to go on this from a long term standpoint? No. There are other better mechanisms to be adopted and root causes to be taken care of to take care of the overall sleep cycle.
makes sense. Makes sense. One more question on this part across nutrition as well as movement recovery. Vasundhara wanted to understand how can we take care of our eyes specifically, as being in this profession causes us to sit on the screen for really long hours. So are there any specifics that you would suggest around this part?
Yes. Few things to be taken care of. Like I mentioned, have a 10 or 15 no screen time for sure. If you are someone who is constantly on the screen, dedicate that and block that on your calendar. Two, there are eye specific exercises that are generally recommended that can be performed and I think need to be performed because a lot of times you will see that, when you're like rolling up your eyeballs all the way up, you will experience some stress around your nerves. That is an indication that your eye nerves are impacted as well. So if you're someone who's facing any sort of challenge there or feels that this causing some impairment in your vision, obviously consult a specialist first and then two, perform some of these exercises more from your eye nervous system standpoint, right? The third thing that I will suggest is your blue light. So I know there are a lot of glasses or screens that come today with blue light. Do they fully help you manage? Like, is it a compensatory tool? I wouldn't say so, but is it helpful? The answer to it is yes. So again, I'll just go back to the basic that if your work involves using a laptop, see how can you minimize usage of mobile because both of these are the same sources, right? What is it that you can best work along with your routine and implement the same?
Makes sense. Okay, there's just one more question on nutrition before we move forward to. So one of the members wanted to understand. I've been taking fruits for breakfast for last 6 years. Recently, I've been told that it is not advisable to take fruits as it causes insulin spike in the morning and it's not good for health. Would you suggest anything for like someone who's vegetarian and take fruits in the morning?
Yes. And that is largely true because if I go back to what I'm speaking from a nutrition standpoint, carbs are more like your cash flows, right? They generate instant energy required for a day to day. But then the other challenge is that some of our food habits are only carbs focused. Fruits are nothing but simple carbohydrates, which means that the moment they're ingested in your body, quicker to digest, and the release of sucralose and fructose, like these are the molecules in there, is very quick. What that means is, yes, you will face an instant energy spike. You will be fine for, let's say, 30 to 45 minutes, but your body will start demanding food or something else again, and high chances it'll demand for a carb because these are these energy spikes. So, is it advisable to take only fruits? The answer to it is no. It is not going to help you from a long run standpoint. You definitely will benefit by adding some form of protein to it. When I say protein, like we get something like, for example, yogurt could be a good option. Greek yogurt could be a good option, like Greek yogurt along with oats or rolled oats and then some fruits because that becomes wholesome. You have protein, you have a complex carb, which is oats. It is slower to digest. It'll release energy slowly, and then obviously fruits taking care of fiber and micronutrients. So that becomes wholesome, and that can probably a better good option. If you're a vegetarian alone, like what I personally do is I saute paneer or tofu in the morning along with some vegetables. That becomes very filling, or it can be like a side dish along with your paratha or roti or whatever you're trying to eat in the morning. So carb alone, is it a problem? Yes. Don't just go with fruit alone. Combine it with another source of protein and a healthy fat.
Great. Thanks a lot for that, Tina. There was one more question on the recovery. Last thing before we move forward, I just don't want to miss the specifics before we move to the broader aspects again, right? On the recovery system, right, where you recommended about having more consistent sleep cycles. So again, for the younger folks or slightly tenured folks who are engaged in projects where there are peak cycles or peak seasons, right? How does someone improve their sleep immediately? Let's say someone who's working for a couple of weeks and just getting to sleep for, let's say, 4 5 hours or 6 hours, right? Working on listed audits or heavy taxation season, right? So you're just getting to sleep for like 5 6 hours. How do you fix that very in a very quick manner so that you're still able to sustain through the remaining peak season, and then you can work upon the long term solutions of making the sleep cycles consistent? Is it something like fixing it through nutrition or meditation or anything that you would suggest to make a quick fix for temporary, and then make it to more gradual?
Yeah. And good question, because I think it relates to all of us in some shape or form in a practical life as well. I will definitely not say that be come what may you have to like sleep for 7 hours, because I know it's practically not possible in the environment that we live in, right? Now, what's important if you're someone who is just having 4 hours of sleep, adopt one routine before your sleep hours. Now, some of the routines that we discussed, obviously, some of the tools that we discussed, I'll not repeat them, but pick one that works for you and do it diligently. And do it diligently and consistently during your entire peak season. There is something called a sleep debt. So, if you have the opportunity to be able to, like take naps later after your busy season is over, go for it. It's not that you can compensate for a lost night's sleep by sleeping in the afternoon, but power naps are effective. They help recover your sleep debt, and then your body is going to feel a little more rested. The reason I called out journaling is also because it helps with mental switch down. Srujan touched upon a very good point, meditation, which is something that I did want to cover in my next slide. Now, understand what your recovery is meant for. Your body needs a gap where it is not doing anything, where it is able to restore, right? So, if you're someone who is going through that challenge of just being able to sleep 4 or 5 hours and there's no way out, what is it that you can do to calm your nervous system down, right? Now, that is where obviously one powerful technique is journal, the other powerful technique is meditation. Lot of evidence, lot of science-backed research to say medicine does help restore your nervous system calmness. It helps bring your brain waves to a normal level as well, and that in turn can impact your sleep recovery. So I do want to say that I know this is not a perfect answer considering the situation that we are in, but some of these tools can become powerful techniques to be able to be reliant on a day-to-day basis. And then obviously once you're off your busy season, focus on recovery. Like if someone were to always ask me, my clients ask me that I was not able to sleep well last night, should I hit the gym or should I prioritize sleep? My answer is always prioritize your sleep. You cannot overexhaust your body or deplete it further. Recover from your sleep debt and then go and hit your best in the gym or whatever routine you have.
That makes sense, Tina. I think some of these tactical insights are really helpful. Again, we can cover some other broader questions towards the end. We can move forward.
Yes. So this particular slide, I know we discussed a lot from nutrition, movement, drivers of performance, how clarity is important. This slide is something that is connecting both my athlete mindset and CA. Like I said, CA has been the foundation of everything that I did. The skills that I learned back then have been helpful in every aspect of my life. Now, I'm a power lifter, which means that I lift heavy weights. There are three main lifts, right? Your deadlift, squat, and bench press. What really helps, and if you talk to any athlete, is the first step is visualization. Before you actually perform a movement or before you actually, let's say, sign a big deal, visualization becomes a very key technique, because the more you visualize, the more you're training your brain and your nervous system to say that, okay, this is not an ad hoc scenario that I need to be scared of, or this is not something that I need to fear on what's going to happen. Did I make an error or not? The more you train your brain, is where there's more science and evidence to say that when you hit reality, it is not going to be something which is like a one-off. I mean, I just want to share a personal example here. Like my highest squat has been 75 kgs. I failed it every time in the gym. But right before I went on my competition, I was visualizing it. Like I literally lived through that experience, which also obviously involves the emotional aspect of it, right? But the more you do it is where it becomes a reality. And I was able to successfully do that lift on the competition day. Same applies for my career as well. Like Srujan pointed at the start, like where I come from is something probably I would have not envisioned that I will be working with a large corporate today, right? But it is a visualization technique that has really applied and really becomes of essence. So obviously don't want to sound preachy or practical, but the more you're able to visualize your day-to-day scenario, your peak cycles, pre-plan and see how it can be applied, is where you're easing your entire day and routine to be able to go on, because you've already faced that in your mind once. Preparation application is nothing but, yes, just thinking alone will not work. Just visualization alone will not work. Meditation is a good technique, to help visualization as well. But you need to design those systems. You need to plan your schedule. You need to apply that minimum value principle that I spoke of to ensure that things might break, right? Everything is not going to be perfect, but what is it that can you do from a minimum value standpoint? Now this applies both for your studies, it applies equally for your professions. Like not every day is the best day, right? There are situations where you receive feedback from a client for not being able to meet a specific timeline, or someone may not be approached, not happy with the pitch or presentation you made. So those are real case scenarios. Everything is not perfect, but have your fallback system. The last thing that I do want to highlight is on accountability. I think this profession really demands strong ethics and accountability. This is obviously accountability to the institute, accountability to organization, to the clients, our stakeholders. So bring in that element, right? Like if you're someone who's self-motivated, always accountable, knows that if you have decided 5 things for the year that can be applied, can be done, go for it. But if you're someone who realizes that I have fallen off the crack multiple times, like I said, it's not a personal failure. Be accountable to someone. That accountability could be your partner, it could be your husband, wife, spouse, it could be to a friend, right? It could be to a coach, it could be to one of the seniors or managers, depending on what side of goal it is. Studies indicate 90% of the performers who said what they will do, and versus the performers who are able to achieve it versus those who are not able to, accountability plays a big role. That is why you see a lot of people on social media today sharing what their goals are. That is one way of training their brain and signal to say that, okay, I am accountable to the public. If I have said this in public, I will make it happen, right? And there are a lot of movies based on this concept of accountability also. So if you are someone who is struggling in whatever aspect of life it may be, ask for help, be accountable to someone, and then make that as part of your DNA and your routine, because these 3 things put together is where it will really take you off, be it whatever aspect of your life it is. I know we are almost coming to the closing time, but what I do want to say is everything that I shared over here obviously is built on my personal journey and something that I worked with 700 coaches. There are demanding corporate roles that I have been part of. There are personal commitments that I need to fulfill on a day-to-day basis. But what has really helped me is relying over these systems more than motivation. So I've always been a disciplined kid, right? And then it is funny if we say that there's a CA who's not disciplined. But what really happens sometimes is because of the environment that we are in, we might be forced to push off certain of our priorities. But remember, your health is the base of everything. And then you need a system to ensure that even when your motivation fails, even when discipline is not working, you are consistent or at least applying the minimum value principle that we spoke of. So, this is just to sum up everything that we discussed. We spoke of energy systems, the basic things that you can do on a day to day basis when it comes to maintaining your energy, your movement and recovery. If you're someone who believes in maintaining a diary and doing a daily check-in or a weekly check-in, do that. If you think that may not work for you, be accountable to someone and have a weekly dedicated call or discussion to say that, can we review this on a week over week basis? So obviously discipline is one element. You always need to draw a balance between what is it that the environment is forcing you to do versus what is your self problem, right? Sometimes natural human tendency, we might become that, okay, there's so much that I've done, let me just take a break. Taking a break is fine, but then ensure you're coming back to your basics and setting up the foundation, and then maintain that accountability both in your busy seasons and non-busy seasons. Always look at it from a long-term horizon standpoint, because I'll reflect back to the two examples that I shared earlier. If this is if your health is a side project for you, it is eventually going to impact your power, your clarity, your decision making, which are like the tools that every chartered accountant, wants to live with. So help build that accountability system so that it helps you achieve your personal as well as your professional goals. So this is all that I had. If you have any questions, feel free to reach out to me. I've shared my number here. You can reach out to me via email as well. So over the period of time, like I've been a coach for last 6 years now, and then I've reached the stage where we have been able to come up with a team to be able to help people, especially busy professionals, achieve their health and fitness goals. That is all from me. Srujan, I will hand back to you.
Yeah, thanks a lot, Tina. I think there are two or three, deep dives from last two, three things that we discussed that, I wanted to further deep dive into, and there are a couple of good questions that are also coming in on that. So when you talked about CA having an athlete mindset, right, and especially in terms of bringing the accountability part of it, right? So even one of the members had a question that what advice would you give young CAs who believe that right now they should only focus on career and not prioritize health, right? How do they look at it? So what would be your take on this?
Yeah. I mean, it's a question to yourself. Do you want to think short term or do you want to think long term? Right. So you don't want to be someone who is a star performer for next 1 year, 2 years, 3 years, but then is also slightly building up that quiet cost that we spoke about.
Yeah.
Uh, so it's a self decision. If you know you're in the game only for the next 5 years or so, yes, your energy will support you to be able to achieve your professional goals, but the quiet cost will also equally build up. You don't want to be someone who is like who is realizing the importance of health only via a medical report, because every year lost, it takes another 2 to 3 years to gain what you lost, right? Like, so when I've been an obese kid since my childhood. Like, I was overweight even in my sixth standard. But then once I learned the science of it, the one feeling that I have till date is, why did I not start this early? Or was this something that I could do as a minimum level? And that has been the intent, right? Like, just stick to basics. You don't have to be an athlete, you don't have to appear for competition, but don't compromise on the foundation, because sooner or later it is going to impact everything that you do.
Yeah, so it would be fair to say that the way to look at it is, your career is not a 100-meter sprint, but a marathon. So accordingly build it depending on the, stage you're in. There was another question on the, stage since we are discussing about it, right? So Sanchit wanted to understand that the CA profession, of course, demands high accuracy and long hours, right? How do we redefine high performance beyond billable hours or deadlines? And to build on this, how do we measure, success across different stages of our career?
Yes. Um, l- for us, especially in this profession, and I think it applies equally to other professions as well, it is not in terms of the pay package that you have. It is not in terms of how fast have you been able to grow up the titles when compared to your peers. It is 10 years, 15 years down the line, are you able to do what you want to do? A lot of times people say that, okay, let me really burn out myself for the next 5 years and then I will focus on my personal life after that. The reality is that you have already lost something that you probably could have done in those 5 years. Like, we can't reverse age. Uh, the energy levels that I had when I was 20 is something that I will not carry when I am 30, right? So I know the question was also more around what are some of the measures or success criterias. I think it is more individualistic. What I do want to call out is that you need to decide for yourself what is your success criteria. And you can have one career related goal, one financial related goal, one family related goal, but include one health related goal as well. It could be something very simple to say that, okay, I will do 8,000 steps every day for the next 365 days. As simple as that, and stick to it. So I don't want to say that success criteria are only in terms of if you have been able to do X, Y, and Z, because I think it is very individualistic. Like, my success criteria right now may not be equal to what Sujan prioritizes from his life standpoint. It may not be for someone else. So decide what success really looks for you, but don't forget the foundation and the basics of it.
That makes sense, Tina. Thanks a lot for that. Maybe I could, if I were to, summarize all the inputs that you have shared with us across last 90 minutes or so. I would just build it between five different segments and just help me recollect if that is the right way to look at it. Right. Number one, as you highlighted, in terms of our profession, the first segment is peak cycles or the expectations from us is inevitable, right? So it's structural to our profession, but what we really need to do is, look for early signals in terms of what is working well, what is not working well. Simple examples, as we highlighted, were not being able to sleep, for prolonged hours, or consuming too much caffeine, right? So as we highlighted, do not treat health as a side project. Number two, as you highlighted, in terms of energy inputs or the nutrition, right? Uh, Engineer those nutrition or movements through smaller habits. You used a very interesting analogy of balancing cash flows to carbohydrates and treating fats as your capital expenditure or long term investments, right? Number three is more in terms of eliminating the volatility which is caused by skipping the meals, maybe caused by outstation audits, traveling, peak cycles, leading to zero movements, poor sleep, etc., and eliminating those through very small habits. You gave an example of atomic habits, right? Which is, success would not be brought in by a single one day transformation, but more through, baby steps. And those could be like systemic changes as small as putting in a water alarm to have 6 to 7 sips of water, consuming 3 to 4 liters or something, or having a small food champ, having a blackout period. Number four is more around, as you highlighted, in terms of bringing in through discipline and not relying on motivation, right? You would not be just, you would need to bring things into the system slash discipline and not just doing that ad hoc, based on motivation or pings by, yeah, things. And the last point, as you said, a fantastic thing around accountability in terms of bringing that into your mindset, that your career has to be extended by measuring the success maybe in decades, not in years, not in deadlines, not in audit seasons, not in taxation seasons, right? So bringing in that athlete mindset instead of a 100-meter sprint mindset. I think that's how I would sum up this, and I would say that yeah, the sustainable success for a CA is not just by pushing harder, but building, a better system that would, build us clarity. I think, as you said, clarity is one of the greatest professional assets that we as chartered accountants have, right? So it's really imperative for us to continue building on that through these systemic changes. I think thanks a lot for those inputs. At the end, I would like to just thank our dignitaries, Chairman CA Jay Chhera sir, Vice Chairman of the committee CA Sridhar Mupalla sir, and Secretary of the committee CA Priyambada Girdhar ma'am. I would also like to express much gratitude to you, CA Tina Jain ma'am, for sharing all the valuable inputs, and not just broader but smaller tactical things that any CA could bring to their life tomorrow, or fresh start, if you were to say, maybe next Monday, if not tomorrow. But those fabulous small tweaks and tactical inputs would, I'm sure, will be very, very helpful for all the members in the fraternity. So thanks a lot for that. I would just request all the members to fill the feedback form that would be circulated by the team, so that we could learn and hear from you in terms of what are the smaller changes that you felt were a value addition from this session, and that could be brought into the life, and also any suggestions that could be built in terms of future sessions that the work-life balance committee could bring to improve the overall lifestyle of members of the fraternity. That is all from my side. Thanks a lot for joining in, everyone, and hope you have a great weekend. Get some time to rest and come back on Monday with a fresh energy.
Thank you.
Yes.